Genesis. Memory Alpha, I think, is the. Yeah, Memory Alpha is the Star Trek wiki. Oh, good. I love the ad. That's why is Wikipedia so anti-ad, but like all the fan Wikipedias are like super ad covered.
I just use an ad blocker. Not a sponsor or anything, but if you can get your hands on like Brave, trust me, you won't go back to another web browser ever again. So
Yeah, maybe that's
yeah, and
Project Genesis is the one I wanted to look up, not the episode Genesis.
they even like YouTube, they'll just sit there and they'll block out all your YouTube ads for you. So you just get basically free YouTube Premium without like the downloads and stuff. So
Yeah, maybe that's the way to go. I should have like a I should get into like a proper non Google Chrome browser, honestly, but I've just been too lazy to do it.
fair enough.
Yeah. So hello, welcome to PoliSciFi
Hello.
pod. I'm not sure if I want to add the pod part to the end of the sentence. I don't know. Our full title's always been a bit of flux.
Well, I mean, fucking Kyle and Cody's called CinemaCast is not unnecessarily like the easiest thing to throw around a lot of the time. But like I don't mind calling us the Poly Sci-Fi Pod, but like on paper it looks good, but on like when speaking, it's probably just Poly Sci-Fi is good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like I've done I like my weird longer podcast titles. I mean, I also do Podcast of the Living Zombie, so that's
I mean that like once again, if you know who we are, it's easy as fuck. But trying to find us with like a 16 character long name title is probably not.
yeah. And I've never picked titles with like the idea of like search algorithm in mind. Because it's a science which I do not fully understand, and I may never. But yeah, we're so the story behind this one is that I was editing the Death Star episode, and I'm like, and I was making some points in it, and I was just like, wait, doesn't this? What about the Genesis device from Star Trek? Because I remembered a very specific scene from Star Trek 3 where oh, what's the fucker's name? Christopher Lloyd, the Klingon Christopher Lloyd plays. That's who plays him, right? Krug.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Christopher Lloyd
Krug.
sounds correct.
Yes, Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, Christopher Lloyd. Yeah, in the Klingon 3 when he's talking about the Genesis device, which is ostensibly this thing in the Star Trek franchise, which can like create a new planet in theory. Um, and when Krug, this Klingon commander, thinks about this, he finds out about this. He's just like, yeah, it's a really interesting piece of technology. Is it interesting enough to want it to stay around and live underneath the Federation flag for the rest of your days? And I was like, oh, maybe we do an episode about that's like the reverse of the planet killer, of the planet creator.
Fair enough. I ain't no scientist, but like I think that this is like proposing one of the main theories here currently is that um to not necessarily rebuild the planet, but to build the planet, one of the biggest theories in science is that um, all of the stuff that we need to build the planet is currently in asteroids. The asteroids hit the planet and basically deposit the building blocks of life onto that planet, and then 2-3 thousand years later, you've got some form of like, I wouldn't say sentient life, but
Yeah,
some level
you
of
probably
like
mean
life
million.
forms.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of complicated ideas about like obviously space is big and like there's a lot of different things going on. And yeah, it's so like we always have this difficulty in space where it's just like, okay, how often does like in Star Trek they call it a class M planet? How often are these class M planets coming around? And Star Trek seems to find them pretty regularly, but if your ship's a good bit slower, having a not having a class M planet within a certain amount of time could be really bad for your space travel situations. Um, and then there's also like you could use other class M planets as like a jumping off points and essentially like leapfrog your way across the galaxy and like have yourselves a lot short like have a, you wouldn't need to make like super long trips anymore. You could make shorter trips between multiple planets.
It's also the
And this is all,
the
yeah.
whole reason why
Go ahead.
everybody is like, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson like said it best last time. Like when we're talking about space travel, the only time where we as a planet are ever like, hey, we need to do something with space travel, it's always because somebody else on the planet is like, hey, we need to do something with space travel. Like the last time, like the big proponent for us as a society getting into space was because Russia wanted to get into space first. So the
Yeah,
US was like, well, we can't let the Soviets do it before we do. So then they got all uppity about it, and then it started the space race. So it's kind of weird that like the only point in time where like, hey, let's go beyond this is when it's like rather a private endeavor, or B, it's like for national security risks. So
yeah. And like there is yeah, there's I mean, I'm going to say it as a joke, but there is a certain amount of hey, I'll make my own planet with blackjack and hookers
I mean, you're not necessarily
going on
wrong.
here. Yeah, yeah, because that happens. Like people have like formed like mini nations before because like they wanted a place where in the okay, here's the big elephant in the room about like making new civilizations because I'm going to talk a lot in this episode about like um what's probably the closest real world equivalent, which is settling unpopulated islands or in some cases maybe creating islands in some way. Um, the big elephant in the room that a lot of guys who are really interested in that are like doing it for like, oh, because I want to make my own country where I don't have to follow certain people's laws,
Mhm.
um, which is really common.
Well, I think one of the
Yeah,
newest theories that I've seen right now is the creator of BlackRock and a
yeah,
couple of like
I've been
very
watching.
unsavory people, including Ghislaine Maxwell, who's currently in prison for the Epstein stuff, um, trying to build terraform islands
Mm-hmm.
off the coast of whatchamacallit. So basically a tax haven and stuff where like illegal things can happen. Um, so
Yeah, tax havens kind of the lower end of the evil you can do with
yes,
this. Um,
but also
I mean, also like
I like 95% certain somewhere, but I want to say in Africa there is a big spot of unclaimed land that has never been claimed, and I think people are actually just running around fighting to claim it. Maybe as a joke, but like, hey, I'm gonna go stick my flag into this land and it's gonna be a new place, and then like 2 months later somebody comes by and knocks it down and sticks it in. But
I mean, there's definitely times when that's been true. We can pick a year, and if we really wanted to, and like, oh, that's a thing that's actually
Hmm.
happened. Um, because there's a bunch of like, even with like colonization of Europe, north of the Americas and Eurasia, there are like overlapping claims that have come up, where like one guy puts something up and then it didn't work out, so another guy puts something up and then the first guy comes around and says, well, actually, we put stuff up in there first, so technically that's supposed to
What
be
was the
ours.
big one here in Canada recently? There was a lady that was running around calling herself like the Queen of Canada, and then she got like
Oh,
busted on like gun charges or something like absolutely insane.
um, I mean that's almost a completely different thing. That's like a I just watched a thing about this, but because they just did the Behind the Bastards on her
Nope.
actually. But no, that's more of like a sovereign citizen thing, which isn't which again isn't totally like scratch a libertarian and some skull. Sometimes a sovereign citizen bleeds, but uh,
It was also like a
yeah.
weird thought that I had the other day that was like maybe the government has way too much control over like everyday people lives. And this is the reason why I thought about this and it was like, hey, why is the government intervening if I wanted to name my kids something really stupid? And like, I'm like, I know I shouldn't as a person, like, name my kids something really stupid, but, like, why is it the government saying, "Hey, you can't name your kid something really stupid," like
Yeah, and there's some arguments about that, about like at what point is any business of yours? Because ultimately, like, if you want to be an anarchist about this, all governments are in some way
Mhm.
legitimate. Like, eventually, if you dig enough about like government of history of any state, you'll eventually find the lie. You'll find the lie of like that, like the Queen of England isn't really like a direct descendant of like King Arthur or whatever the fuck they claim, or like whatever monarch isn't appointed by God, or um, some guys like illegally dislocated from like a larger country or whatever, and they just sort of like force the
saw a
issue.
meme
But
the
yeah,
other day that was talking about how, Kim Jong Un is looking to, like, put her daughter as, like, the next uh, supreme leader of North Korea, and it's like it's really funny to see that the North Korea got a female president before the United States or something along those lines. I'm like, damn, you're not wrong, but like,
just it could have happened at any time. It's just weird that because on like paper, anyway, not really important here, but yeah. So we're really doing this as like a talk. We're talking about like the idea of like building planets and like how that relates to uh like geopolitics or whatever. And like I will just an addendum. Like I know, yeah, the Genesis device didn't work in the movies. I know. It's technically just another planet killer.
mhm.
I know. If it bothers you that much, just pretend we're doing this episode on Titan AE because the principle is the same.
And like, I hate to break it to you, but like, I fell asleep. I think at the end of the first one, and like, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes into the second one. So, and also my Star Trek
That's
knowledge is abysmal because the only thing that I find canon in the Star Trek universe, because I've never sat down and watched like besides the episode on
yeah, the whatever we
yes,
call the one we
I've
did for
never
this
seen a single
about the yeah the
episode of
Nazi episode.
um Star Trek, and like I've seen I think 3 of the new movies, so my wheelhouse knowledge of Star Trek is 95% non-canon Star Trek. So
Yeah, no, I mean I've the thing about early Trek is it's pretty
yeah,
standalone.
so I guess my big
Um,
question here is like where is the continuation between this film,
Um,
and I guess it would have been the episode that they introduced, Khan, where they exiled
okay.
him.
So yeah, it was literally just a one-off episode. They found Khan like just floating in space, and then they had to deal with him, and then they exiled him.
Okay.
Um,
So not the
yeah,
not the
yeah. It's literally
deep-stated lore that I
no.
thought
It's
it
not
was gonna
as
be.
no. I mean, there is because it's um Khan's a genetically engineered super soldier from the late 20th century who was like a major figure in the eugenics wars who had to like launch himself into space, and then that's when Kirk found him. um there is some complicated bits, but it's not about like the plot itself so much. But yeah, like Khan is from the Mad Max period of Star Trek timeline.
Fair enough. Um,
uh yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
where's the so basically it was 15 years after, I guess in the first film we see that, James Kirk is now an admiral. How far, like, how deep is that prior to, like, James
um
Kirk? I had it, and then it just completely slipped my mind. Yeah, how far off from this episode is, like, the beginning of the next episode, like, the beginning of this movie? Because I guess we're in the movie.
yeah. So yeah, like I think it's like a decade or something since the end of the series, um, which was a 5-year mission. Yeah, and like there's almost no like there are really no two-parters in the original Star Trek. There's one, but there's one. There's no fancier thing there, but it's not even like that significant. It's just like they did a random
Okay.
Romulan episode
And
that was
what
two
happened in
parts
the
for
first
some
film?
reason. They find the Voyager space probe, which has apparently crashed into God and become like a
Okay.
godlike entity.
So way
Yeah,
way cooler than
totally
this
unrelated.
like,
Yeah.
plot line?
Uh,
Like, infinitely?
uh, no. I mean, you'd think. Uh, I mean, you'd think. It's actually pretty. They spend it's a lot of uh long. Like they spent like 10 minutes doing like a big uh Playboy spread of the Enterprise. It's like a really slowly
Okay.
paced movie. It's not the best. Um, yeah, and they do that stuff in other episodes, and it's a plot we've seen before. Sometimes done a lot better. Um, and then yeah, the movies are continuous between like Star Trek 2 and up until the end of the Star Trek movies, or at least the original series ones. Um, because the last one is 5 or 6. I think it's 6, but there's a vague continuity. And by the end of that, the last one's only just like, oh, it's just referencing the fact that like the Klingons killed Kirk's son or whatever. So
Oh,
yeah.
so you're probably a bigger Trekkie than me. What is up with the, I think I've seen multiple reference of space whales that seem to trigger a lot of people.
Oh,
Like,
okay. So there's two things. Uh, Firstly, the movie after Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4, um, is one where they have to go into the past because this big powerful alien thing decides it's like going to destroy Earth unless it finds a whale. So the Enterprise crew needs to go back in
okay.
time and find a whale because whales die. We let whales go extinct. Um, it's a really fun. It's actually a really good
Okay.
movie. It's way better than you think it is. Um, yeah, but yeah, they have to. They go and they go back in time in the Bird of Prey they get from the Star Trek 3, so they don't actually
Huh.
have the Enterprise in that one. Uh, So yeah, that's what that is. And then in the next generation, they were going to have it so that dolphins were the navigators on the Enterprise.
Wait, what?
Yeah, because the basic premise is that like dolphins are actually sentient beings, and so that we can communicate, and so that means we can communicate with them with like Star Trek technology, and because dolphins are used to moving in three directions, they can be used to pilot the ship. But obviously, the budget wouldn't allow for that, so they never ended up doing it. But it does show up in Star Trek Lower Decks, which is the animated one.
Is Star Trek Lower Decks just making fun of Star Trek at this point?
I
Okay,
mean, they're laughing with Star Trek because
fair enough.
they do love it, loves the
I think
show.
I think
Like they're
one of
having fun. We're all having fun there. So
most common things that I've seen make fun of like the space whale theory is like Futurama. So
yeah, lots of Trek references in Futurama. Yeah, up to the point where the entire cast showed up for Futurama. But anyway, except for the one that passed away at that point. But anyway, yeah, yeah. I guess the one. So yeah, and to finish my earlier point, Titan AE is a Star Trek is a series about like or a single movie made by Fox Animation where they where humanity has a planet builder, and then an alien empire decides to blow up Earth because the planet maker
Mhm.
made Earth a too big a threat. So that I feel like that only proves my point that this is something we should be talking about. And then obviously the Genesis project never really develops in the mainline Star Trek timeline. They never figure it out. Um, it appears a few handful of times in some of the novels, and it shows up in one of the Lower Decks seasons, but they've never like made it into a proper planet builder because also the way the Genesis device works, it literally just turns non-organic matter into organic matter. So like yeah, you can use it to kill a bunch of living people. They were like in Star Trek 2, they're really concerned about finding a totally lifeless planet to launch this thing on because they don't want to like destroy the only example of whatever microorganism is sitting on planet
Mhm.
whatever SETI Alpha 7 or whatever. It's very much like, oh, if we do this and we blow up something we shouldn't, we're never getting it back.
So that was the big thing that pissed Khan off against James Kirk was like he dropped him off on a planet that was doomed. I'm assuming.
Um, well, I don't think they knew it was Doom. The implication is that just like something is okay. So they were looking for SETI Alpha 6 to like to test the Genesis device on. Khan got dropped off
Mhm.
at SETI Alpha 5. SETI Alpha 6 exploded, thereby devastating SETI Alpha
Okay.
5. So like Kirk didn't mean to fuck him over as badly as he did. Um, the original episode that Khan appears in is called Space Seed, actually, because the implication that like, okay, we're just going to set this band of superhumans on like a random planet, and they'll like develop their own society, and like we'll come back in like several years and see how that turned out. And yeah, I guess they didn't. No one ended up
Fair.
checking on them. It's a bit of a plot hole, actually. Like it's the one big continuity flub with like this whole thing. I mean, the second continuity flub being that like Chekhov wasn't in the original Space Seas episode. So like the first time Chekhov's actor and Khan's actor meet in real life is in this movie because they were never on that show at the same time. Chekhov got introduced in the next season.
Which, yeah, is a major one. I guess it's not as bad if you're like, hey, this guy's from the Enterprise. I clearly know that, but
Yeah. So so funny story. The explanation the director has from this when it's pointed out to him, he's saying that, oh, so I'm actually, it's my headcanon, the director says essentially, is that like Chekhov was on the Enterprise. He just wasn't like a officer. He was like an ensign or something at the time, and he got promoted between the seasons, which is why we didn't see him in the earlier seasons. He was just some regular gold shirt in the original one,
Okay.
in like season 1 or whatever. So, and like his explanation for why Khan knew who Chekhov was, because we don't see them interact on screen at all, is that Chekhov was like hogging the bathroom and really stunk it up, and like and Khan was waiting on it. So when Chekhov wanders out, he's like, sorry, Khan, I've really stunk. No, I've really stunk. I can't do a Russian accent, but he's like, Chekhov really stunk up the bathroom before Khan was going to go into it, and that's why Khan doesn't like Chekhov.
Weird, but
Yeah, and that's sort of what we've accepted
okay.
as canon. Yeah, even though I don't think that's how space bathrooms work. Anyway, but yeah, anyway, on to our actual topic because we've talked about the continuity of this a lot too much. So, what are the rules for like creating new land? Now, it's a complicated thing because we really haven't quite like nailed out how to do that. Like, yeah, just the technology is not quite there in real life, so this is like a lot of things. This is firmly into things where like the UN's had like
Mm-hmm.
people talk about this. It's like, okay, here's what theoretically we might do if this becomes an issue at some point in the future. And this is all subject to change based on blah, 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 blah. But it's like, okay, the technology's not really here, so we're just kind of like sitting around having a bunch of philosophy majors discuss this as like a theoretical. Um, because we really haven't gotten this thing where like we could have like massive permanent institutions on the sea. Um, Certainly nothing that's like self-sustaining. But like in order for this to be a real thing, we'd have to have like probably like good tens of thousands of people self-sustaining in the middle of the ocean, and then it might
Yeah.
become like an actual issue. Um, Generally, like it is assumed that any of these projects will require like some sort of backing from an actual country, and they would be under that country's jurisdiction, which would in theory solve the problem. Um, Dubai has been doing some experimentation with like making artificial islands. It's semi practicable. They've somewhat done it. It's not entirely clear how sustainable this is going to be in the super long term. There are some questions about long term stability and whatnot, but yeah. Um, and then there's also uh, the issue of like, okay, do we really want people like making their own private islands in the middle of the ocean, even assuming they can do that? Like, is that even something we should allow? Because how many of these people are actually doing it for a good reason? Um, and like they're like you don't necessarily look at the Venn diagram of people that could make their own islands and people that can make their own islands, and you don't necessarily like that Venn diagram, or the people that should. And there's also the example that like we're worried about in Star Trek 3, which is that, oh, what if like people like actual countries decide to do this and like do it to such a scale that they can like increase their coastline? Because general rule is that you have sovereignty up to like 12 miles off your coastline, um, something like that. Uh, is like that's like very much your deal. Um, And like, okay, what happens when you start like making an island at that 12-mile mark, and then another, and then you do it again and again and again, or make like a big peninsula or something. Um, it's a stupid amount of work, and like it would probably be impracticable. Um, but who knows? Maybe someone comes up with something. Um, and there's also like the theoretical, like, okay, what if climate change does something that gives a certain country more land? Uh, I mean, it's not so much under issue of climate change as we're worrying about it. We're actually worrying about a lot of countries losing land because of it. But theoretically, sea levels could drop in some theoretical scenario, and we need to find out some way to deal with that. But it's complicated because, like, what if, yeah, you don't necessarily want people making their own islands because it will like destabilize otherwise sensitive situations, um, and usually at the hands of people who want those situations to be destabilized for nefarious ends. Um, you could do some shitty stuff to like threaten other countries that have like a narrow-ish sea gap between them, stuff like that. There are obviously uses for it, but yeah, there's a lot of concerns. Um, and once you do like planet stuff, where like, um, yeah, there's Star Trek has like a sort of a territory system, but it's generally assumed that like a lot of that area is just like, okay, this is the area between two claimed planets, and like you don't necessarily have like an outpost in every square inch of the galaxy because that would be literally impossible. So like what happens with like you can start like making a planet of like human colonists or whatever and put it wherever you want, that becomes a problem. And like Star Trek has had a lot of episodes, especially in like the DS9 and TNG era, where like people have moved into places where they're not necessarily allowed, and it becomes or has become politically inconvenient, and it becomes a big shit show where like people have to fight and shit over it. See like uh there's like a TNG episode where like it's a little on the nose. There's literally a teenage TNG episode where like there's a border dispute between the Federation and some people called the Cardassians, and these um this this group of literally like a bunch of First Nations people had decided to colonize this planet and like restore like traditional ways of living. And because of this the new treaty between the Federation's Cardassians, the Federation has to kind of is like legally obligated to move these people off their land. It's been somewhat controversial.
Uh, Avatar. That's what I'm thinking of when I say this. Basically, we a moon um being outposted by military and trying to siege essentially the native population out of existence.
Yeah, that's obviously a thing too. Um, and like in theory, you could also use this to like get around that problem because like, oh, well, I don't need to colonize this occupied planet. I can just make a new planet,
Mhm.
possibly somewhere where it's more convenient for me, depending on the technology. But then you go into the other problems that we've been talking about a little bit earlier, because like a lot of military conquest has been thwarted because because the bad guys were trying to do something logistically infeasible. And anytime you make something more logistically feasible, it can cause problems for people. You don't necessarily want it to be easy. You don't necessarily want it to be easier for people to go over the Alps. You don't necessarily want it to be easier for people to You don't necessarily want people making a land bridge between China and Taiwan. Uh, you don't necessarily want a direct land connection between Alaska and the far end of Russia. Examples like this, it's and like can make a problem. And like, what happens when you start making? Yeah, you can just make, like I said earlier, you can make like a little jump, like a hopscotch course where you can hop in between planets that would have been otherwise a really long, exhausting, resource intensive trip
Mhm.
into something that's very easy to do and stable. Yeah. Um, this does just create a situation where you could, if anything, this could be more, in theory, be more devastating to the Death Star because you've suddenly just made yourself you've built yourself your own terrain for your war game. Um, and you can make it in a way that's really convenient for you to invade other places if you want to. Um, so like, despite the fact that like making a planet seems like some really not great and noble thing, um, yeah, it's just
Mhm.
it can be used for nefarious purposes. What do you think? You have any ideas about this so far?
Uh, Not that I think we haven't really touched on. Like,
Yeah, and all this kind of depends on like how easy any of this to do is to do.
not easy.
Um, yeah, like, can you just fire off a Genesis device whenever you want, or a Titan AE
Well,
whenever
I
you
mean,
want? I
I
mean,
think
this
that
is
there was
a
a quote
reasonable
earlier
question.
about like this is
Uh,
just going to be a
yeah,
bigger problem for the Federation than anything. Is it's pretty much hitting the nail on the head. Like, because isn't that the whole thing about the enterprises to go out and
yeah,
like bring people into the fold of the Federation? And if somebody's just like, hey, I'm going to start creating war planets, isn't that
yeah,
just making the Federation's job a lot harder? Because but also, like, it's the other idea that, like, the Federation is the only one with this technology. Like, what would happen if somebody already had a Genesis device and has been creating like, what happens if there's another Federation inside the Federation that's just, like, way better at this? Like, the idea that I guess it also boils down to, like, the idea that, like, the Federation is the only thing out there that's, like, I don't know, self-sustaining enough or big enough to be, like, the only is kinda generally just, like, a flawed point of thinking, and I think it falls down to a very human point of thinking, um, that, like, "Hey, we're the biggest and we're the smartest out there currently, and there's never gonna be anything bigger than us," so mhm.
and yeah, and that goes to people's heads sometimes. Um, like people just decide that like, oh, we can do whatever we want now, and like, I mean, sometimes it goes back to our libertarian islands fantasies. We're like, oh, well, this guy thinks he knows better than everyone else on Earth, so he's going to make his own little island. And like, ultimately, I think what probably happened in the Star Trek continuity, which is why we never see like a perfected version of this Genesis device, is because like in continuity, the Federation has been like totally willing to like not bother with developing certain technologies for the sake of keeping peace. Like that's why the Federation never develops its own cloaking technology. Like that's a thing in the treaty with the Romulans that says like, okay, we'll do this, 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 and you guys can't have cloaks on your ships.
And I think that that was gonna be, like, the other topic I was gonna bring up here was, like, there are people that try and exist outside the Federation. Like, not everybody's like, "Hey, let's join this super country," essentially. Like, there is people that wanna stay independent of themselves and not have to deal with the Federation interfering on their own, like terms, essentially. And for some reason, I'm assuming they're always painted as the bad guys because the two that I can think of off the top of my head are the Romulans and the uh, Klingons. So,
Yeah, and like, well, a big part of that is because like there were other friendly things before the Federation, but those like the Federation is ultimately a like starts as this collaboration between
mhm,
the humans, the Vulcans, and the Andorians. Um, which those were the ones who were most friendly. Is that like the humans were able to like create a peace between the Vulcans and the Andorians, and they end up with making and forming like a little super government. Um, and then like there's a lot of smaller, friendlier guys who are like, oh yeah, we'll sign on. Yeah, we'll do that. And like the Federation's very much like it's not in theory a unified government. They tend to they don't as much
mhm,
have like control over every individual planet. Um, like it's a very it seems very human centric. Um, some of that's because of budget, because they don't want to pay for costumes for every fucking actor. But um,
yeah,
like a lot of like the humans are one of the big dogs in there. Um, yeah, and because and the guys who weren't able willing to take that deal were generally peoples that weren't aligned with Federation values as much, and like very much and people that like the Federation didn't want in some cases, or in other cases where like things were just too big, like the Klingons and the Ferengi and the Romulans are just too big to automatically be put into the Federation. But like in the far future, it seems like things like the Ferengi and the eventually the Romulans and maybe eventually the Klingons, but the Klingons are more arm's reach yet. But like there is this idea of like, oh, well, maybe eventually everyone will become the Federation. But people don't necessarily want that, and that's sort of a slow process. And yeah, but yeah, we'll do a whole thing on the Federation eventually, but we'll have to get someone in who knows their Trek better than I do, or I'll have to finish the next generation anyway. Because I'm
yeah. And
a
I
TOS
think that
guy
was like
mostly.
kind of the reason why I don't want to get into Star Trek, or the idea that or the reason why I think I gravitated more towards the reboot is because I don't want to have to sit down and watch like, um copious amounts of episodes of their original series and then gravitate into like where I'm going to branch off from there, cuz there is, I think,
Yeah,
two or three other like main
yeah,
series. Is like that there's the Next Generation, and then there's the one with
yeah.
the female captain, and then there's the prequel of
Oh
the
God,
like
yeah,
Captain Pike,
yeah,
who is the predecessor to Captain Kirk.
yeah, yeah. There's
Then there's the movies.
yeah, and that's I mean I've like TOS is way easier to get through. It's like 3 seasons and 6 movies. It's great. It's like oh, I guess 5 seasons if you count the animated shows, but they're shorter, so you can kind of count that as one season. Um,
And I also don't really like Shatner.
yeah, you could be. Yeah,
So like if I was gonna start anywhere, I'd probably start with
yeah,
Patrick Stewart because I think he's the
yeah,
superior
and
actor.
I mean early TOS is pretty bad too. That's also a big starting point. Like the first couple seasons of sorry
Hmm.
TNG, the first couple seasons of TNG are kind of bad for the most part, with like a couple good episodes in there.
And I mean Chris Pine and
Uh, but yeah,
what's his face?
um, yeah,
Yes. Although I don't know how
uh,
I feel.
Zachary Levi. Is that his name? I don't. No, it's. I don't think that's it. I think that's Quinto. Zachary Quinto. Quentin. I don't know. I don't know. I haven't watched them in forever, but I do enjoy while you're watching
which is
Wrath of Khan
ultimately
for this. So it's a pleasure.
why I had such a big issue with I think generally the Wrath of Khan, because like when you think of Star Trek villains, I think of like Khan's like the biggest one of them, but like also he was like the smallest whatchamacallit.
Yeah, he's just kind of just a guy, but I do like it for other reasons. But
Well, like I think you kind of see the gravity of the character when he's like sitting there talking to Chekhov,
yep,
and he just like straight up lifts a
yeah,
full-grown human with his one arm. Like,
yeah, he is. Yeah, it's yeah, and it's like it is kind of like a great movie where like you oh yeah, this is what happens when you like strand a egomaniacal supervillain on a planet with nothing to read but Shakespeare and Bible fan fiction.
well, that was my whole point. It was like, oh, you've been in
Yep.
exile for 15 years, and you've just sat there and held a grudge for like the 15 years that you're like sitting there. You weren't even like, hey, maybe I should like better myself in these 15 years. It's like, hey, you know what?
Uh,
Fuck William
yeah,
Shatner.
it's
So,
yeah, he's like and like if you can actually see the stuff on his bookshelf that he's had to read in a little bit, and it's literally like Moby Dick, a few Shakespeare books, uh, fucking Paradise Lost.
well, I think that isn't that like the whole thing about Moby Dick is like the guy couldn't let go of the whale, so he ended up
That's
dying. I've never
Here's the
read
thing about
Moby
Moby Dick.
Dick, so I mean,
Yeah, here's the thing about Moby Dick. That's like a small section of the novel, and the rest of it is hideously boring. Yeah, a lot of it is like boring shit, and then like you get this little legendary bit like toward the end where like he's like hunting the white whale, and it's like this like pinnacle of Western literature, and then like it's like barely any of the novel because they didn't know how to write back then. Um, yeah, but which is why everyone and their dog has done it in like a better version of it. But anyway, but yeah, but yeah, and Star Trek's a great place to explore these politics too. With Star Trek's always been a master of taking a certain lesson from the Cold War of like being able to see the other point of view, even when it's like from a place that's not necessarily
mhm.
sympathetic. Um, which is, I think, the in the end, the message of Star Trek is like understanding things that aren't necessarily sympathetic to you at some level. Um, and sometimes you fight that, and sometimes you just gotta let it be to an extent. Um, I think of like there's things like this where like ultimately the lesson of the Genesis device, which kind of happens off screen, is that like, yeah, this is potentially like an amazing technology, but maybe we leave it to the side because, yeah, maybe we are the greatest hope for the universe, but maybe that's not worth like fighting an endless war over. Sometimes it's worth fighting over, sometimes it isn't, and that's the question we got to ask ourselves sometimes. The question of when do we break the prime directive?
Wasn't that the big thing in like Hamilton that we're still like clinging on to at this point in time? Like, yeah, like there was a quote in Hamilton that basically said like, "Hey, do you want to sit here and fight for every country that ever wants to start a civil war from like here onwards?" And then we see the same thing happening in the United States, where anything that's like, "Hey, we're gonna go socialist, we're gonna like invade, sanction,
Yeah,
tariff, like, and try and crush out socialism at the roots, essentially, prior before
yeah,
socialism becomes a big thing." So it's like that whole. Red Scare that we still haven't let go of, and then until we actually end up
you
letting
kind
go
of
of it, I think
there's an element where like
we're gonna be
you can't, if you stomp out evil
pigeonholed.
everywhere, you're gonna become the evil at a certain point. Because like at what point do you got to stomp out every little potentially evil thing? Like that's which is obviously where some people go with it, where they start going after potential evil or whatever. But yeah. Well, I think that's the episode. Yeah.
And this, in hindsight, is why I should have my own island content.
Yeah. We'll
So
give Cody his own island.
please start donating.
Yeah. We'll give Cody the sovereign island of Utland, where he will be lone sovereign. Yeah.
I actually
Sovereign
prefer
king.
the
It's
term king.
same-ish thing. Yeah. And that'll work. And we shall. Yeah, and we think that Cody has like a birth line claim to let's say Manhattan Island. Yeah.
No, Nova Scotia.
Oh yeah,
I want
one of the
P Island or
PEIs,
bust.
because there's like 3 of them, aren't there? Or is it one island? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're from Saskatchewan.
I have no clue.
We don't need to worry about this. We're in middle land. We're on the opposite of an island.
I think we looked at a map. I gotta say though that I think the worst part of like growing up in Canada was having to sit there and color all of Canada in like grade 3 or 4 or whatever it was. I mean, Saskatchewan was definitely the easiest color, but everything else kind of sucked ass because of all the islands off the offshoot of.
They didn't make me color stuff as much because I didn't do a good job. But I did have puzzles. I did also have the American puzzle, which was a bit more fun just because there was more pieces. Canada puzzle is just like 10 things. You can't really get it wrong. It's pretty hard to. I can't remember. Did that puzzle have Nunavut on it? I could probably find it anyway. But no, the American ones. The American puzzle was more fun, which I also had. It's a fun puzzle, not a fun way to run a country. Honestly, too many states. Too many states.
Yes, yeah, so ultimately, I keep on forgetting every single time I ever look at a map of Canada that there is like north of like none of it. There's the Alaska, because it's not included on the map of Canada because it's technically a U.S. state. So I always forget that there's that little hemorrhoid, and at some point in time, you could cross into Alaska because of boundaries and like territory lines and stuff like that. So
yeah. But anyway, yeah. I think that's the episode. We're rambling now.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a short ass episode.
Yeah, there's a couple minutes of dead air I gotta knock out of this thing when I get to it. I don't know what we're doing next. I might want to get started on my fucking April Fool's episode, but I think it's a little far out yet. Maybe we do a comic book thing next, but we'll figure it out later.
We can't read.
Yeah. No, we'll figure this out later. But yeah. Yeah, follow, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, buy my book, The Pennsylvanian, out now. But yeah, say bye to the people, Cody.
Oh yeah, sorry. Zoned out there for a second. My mind's on like 30 different things right now. Goodbye.